Throughout the entire One Piece community, there has always been the conception that the previous generation of fighters was the most powerful, specifically Roger's era of combatants. In that time, there were figures like Whitebeard, Garp, and Sengoku, all of whom were very young / in their primes. But does that really matter? Because there are multiple pieces of evidence throughout the series pointing to age not being a factor in someone's strength. Today, I'm going over 6 figures who fit this description to determine whether or not age affects strength in One Piece, as well as if Roger's age group was truly the greatest. Before though, I need to go over the roots of each perspective we'll be talking about.
Maybe the older niggas is just better than the young niggas, I don't know.
Now, when I say roots, I mean to discuss where these arguments came from in order for greater understanding. This is so sheep in the comments don't just say, "ShadX, you're stupid. How the fuck would age not affect a character's script?" To start with said perspective though, no matter how you look at the situation, time does not affect One Piece characters like it does RL. In real, boring life, humans reach their physical peak in their 30s. Not for One Piece. There are people in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s who are stated to be at their most powerful. In fact, the whole narrative of being old does not come about until we get to figures who are in their 70s specifically. However, it is still a running theme no matter how absurd it is, which is where we get the idea of Roger's generation being the strongest, because we have those such as Whitebeard, Garp, Sengoku still being at the top of the world. So the logical assumption is that if they were in their primes like everybody else, they would be much greater. Is it really so simple though? And this is where we leech into the other perspective. So do you just turn 70 and lose all your ability? Seems stupid, right? Yet it looks as if Oda himself believes the same thing. In an SBS, I know, bear with me, Oda states, "I've always disliked young people who can't respect their elders or make fun of them. That's why in One Piece, one of the fantasies I want to depict is how cool it would be if old men, old women, grandpas and grandmas didn't lose their strength." This statement is the entire reason why there is a crowd of people who believe One Piece characters do not decline in power. It looks clear cut, right? Oda himself said it and it's his story, so whatever he says goes. But not so fast, because words can be interpreted in multiple different ways. The other common interpretation is that Oda just wants old people to still be strong, yet not necessarily as strong as they were in their primes. That's not conjecture either. If we really took the SBS words at complete face value, it would contradict the multiple examples of old people being weaker which Oda wrote into the actual story. This, boys and girls, is where we get into all the smaller arguments. To do such, we need to go over the 6 characters I mentioned earlier. Standing at the age of 72, Whitebeard was still the strongest man in the world, the king of the seas who reigned as one of the 4 emperors. So it's simple to say that in his prime, he would be far greater, right? Well, let's see. Even before Marineford, we saw Newgate needing special medical equipment just to stay afloat. This is due to an unknown illness he possesses. During the war, we see this illness on full display as Whitebeard is significantly hampered in terms of observation and Conqueror's Haki. So he wouldn't be able to use advanced Conquerors, which is an overall stats boost, meaning Newgate was an entire blitz difference slower / weaker than he could be. Akainu mocks him for this, plus Whitebeard monologues to himself about not being the strongest forever. But again, that's all due to the sickness. We never actually see what peak old Whitebeard could do. The only actions shown from him is easily beating Ace and equaling Shanks in a clash. So the question is, what is the difference between healthy old Whitebeard and his prime self? There really is nothing to concretely say he's different. The databooks state multiple times he got weaker. Whitebeard definitely had a prime, but was it significantly beyond his old self? Prime Newgate does replicate the same ocean split that he did at Marineford by simply yelling, though again, that was Marineford Whitebeard. You could say Old Beard was only able to clash with Shanks, whereas Prime Beard clashed with Roger. Okay, why can't Shanks just be as strong as Roger? There's absolutely no evidence against that. So I'll leave Whitebeard as an open case. He has declined from his younger self, but there's no points to prove he's whole tiers lesser. His anti-feats in Marineford don't count either, as those are due to Newgate's health condition, not necessarily his age. Sitting at the ages of 76 and 79 respectively, the elderly Garp and Sengoku were still at the top of the Navy. Now, we have not seen much of their primes, however there are 2 lines from Garp himself stating he is weaker. In contrast, there's Garp's newest Weaver card entry which says he possesses the same strength that once cornered Roger. Not only that, but people also use his performance on the battleship bags. From what we see in chapter 1087, Garp's physical power does not decline over time, as he has the same doom sound effect for all of his punches. Though you could use this the other way around to say that Garp hasn't gotten any better, which we know isn't true, or the sound effect of the punches doesn't even matter because they're based off of thresholds of strength rather than the individual needing the exact same power to make the same noise, blah blah blah. You can also take the Roger statement from before with a grain of salt, as Oda has less involvement with the Weaver cards than ever before, plus the story takes precedence over them, and Garp himself said he got weaker. Real quick though, let's go back to what those statements actually mean. The first line from Water 7 is Garp referencing his cannonball throws getting slower because of his old age. The second line is basically the same thing, but after Galaxy Impact. Some believe these are in reference to Garp's skill, however, it doesn't work for the first statement as throwing speed only relies on physical strength. Unless you want to get into the weeds of, well, technique matters. The more popular counter to these statements is that they are just jokes. Now, from a meta perspective, that makes little to no sense, because the absurdity of old man Garp still doing these crazy things only works when the audience has the belief of him being stronger in his prime. Bringing age into the joke doesn't work if he was just the same strength. However, it's different if Garp himself is telling the joke. It could be a case of trying to psych out the people around him by mentioning his supposed prime strength, when in reality he's just being ironic. He knows he's just as good. So it is a very mixed bag. Garp has 2 statements of him being lesser than he was in his prime, though they can be interpreted in like 3 different ways. A Weaver card that says he lost no strength, but again, that's secondary material. And finally, an example of consistently having the same power through the years, though it can be debunked. Add on the fact that we never do get an exact comparison of Garp today versus his prime. I'll leave him as an open case, leaning heavily towards him losing no strength in his old age. Oh, and I guess Sengoku as well. He never really does anything, but the fact that he was still Fleet Admiral, contender for strongest Marine, is saying something. At the age of 78, the right-hand man of the Pirate King is still able to hold off an admiral, even scaring a Yonko. Though, unlike our previous clients, Rayleigh is a bit more clear-cut, as he makes it very clear that the years have slowed him down. Some like to split hairs and say he's only weaker because he hasn't used a sword in a long time, yet that's only mentioned once. Whereas Rayleigh repeatedly references his physical ability having deteriorated, not just swordsmanship. The other argument against this is to say Ray is just lying, like, oh, if I was in my prime I would beat your ass, Kizaru. You know how old people be. But there's no implication of that, especially since there's no reason for Oda to lie through his character for some small detail about strength. It also makes little sense from Rayleigh's perspective when he's saying these things in front of people he's not fighting. Like, you scared a Yonko, what more do you have to prove? The outside story stuff doesn't add much. There is a random scan of Rayleigh not losing any of his power, though that's a translation of a different translation. The Japanese original says something completely different. So again, Rayleigh seems to be pretty clear-cut, with age affecting him in a major way, because if he was in his prime, not only would he have been able to handle Kizaru with ease while saving the Straw Hats, but also beat Blackbeard outright. Okay, so I know what y'all are saying. Chinjao! But seriously, Don Chinjao is relevant to this video. Many people got on me for ranking him so highly in my top 50 vid, yet the fact is, this man fought Prime Garp multiple times. It took Garp training to destroy mountains for Zhao to finally be defeated. Of course, people bypass that to say Garp one-tapped him when that's not what happened. They clashed for multiple panels. Anyways, that's obviously not the power he holds today, as Gear 3rd Luffy in Dressrosa was able to beat him. Now, it is implied a couple times to be Chinjao's age affecting him. However, consider this. For someone who used to fight against Prime Garp, the fact that he isn't old Garp level is telling. Don Chinjao retired from piracy after his defeat. This shows it's not only age that could affect strength, but also activity level. Moria is another good example of that, and he's not even old. We can use the same logic going back to Rayleigh. I dismissed the fact that he hadn't used a sword in a while, but Chinjao shows us how Rayleigh's inactivity could be a bigger factor than his age. However, it raises the question of why Rayleigh isn't weak now. He retired just like Zhao, but was he like a little more active or something? So while it is implied age was affecting Chinjao, it is very clear that his inactivity and breaking of his spirit was the main factor in his decline. We can compare his example to other characters like Rayleigh, who may have also declined due to inactivity. Scopper is the newest old guy on the block, and he is most likely the exact same age as Rayleigh because Zoro and Sanji are also the same age. Gaban is stated to be shoulder to shoulder with his captain and vice, however that's probably only in terms of status. For this video though, we'll assume Prime Gaban was the same level as Prime Rayleigh. Really, elderly Gaban performs the same as Rayleigh. He's able to casually press Luffy/Zoro, who even in their lowest forms are stronger than most Yonko commanders. There's no implication Scopper got weaker, but we don't know exactly how powerful he is now. Gaban clearly was not going all out against Luffy and Zoro, though it is telling that he is even able to challenge them. So we have yet another open case going either way. Now, after all of it is said and done, is the old generation greater than the new? Well, so far, all of these examples show old characters getting weaker. However, not necessarily due to age. Whitebeard has his sickness, Chinjao was inactive, Rayleigh and Gaban could be the same, then we have Garp/Sengoku who could still have their prime ability. Now, that's cool and all, but also consider this. When we see these people state things like, I can't be the strongest forever, I'm too old for this, at my age I couldn't have possibly won, after all these years I'm losing my edge, are we supposed to look at the deeper meaning behind all of these statements, or is there a running theme here? On top of that, it's not just these guys. Many other fighters have statements about age affecting them directly. On the other hand though, Oda himself has said he wants old people to not lose their strength. Beyond the surface level, there are many implications, statements, and maybe even moments showing old characters being as great as they've always been. Which is why this topic is so confusing, because it's not necessarily yes or no, but to what extent you want to analyze the story. Do you think Oda is trying to paint the picture of old characters being weaker, with Roger's generation portrayed as the strongest? Or is he creating something past the face value by leaving all these small details? I know many viewers of this channel will argue the latter, but realize the fact that most of the One Piece community believes Roger's generation is better for a reason. That's not me appealing to majority, I'm just saying that it is the impression Oda gives upon first viewing the series. It's all up to what you guys think. I have no definitive answer, but me personally, until Shanks is stated to be on par with Roger from a credible source, then the Pirate King's generation reigns supreme.